Are we good to go? Okay, so it is 6:07. We're calling to order the planning board on January 3rd. 6 of 7 members are present. Rosemary, Bonnie, Wayne, David, and Andrew. Is that right? And the chairperson, Sam, is not here tonight. And so, therefore, we need to elect a chairperson for the meeting, and then we'll call for nominations.
I second the nomination.
So, all those in favor? Aye. And I will chair the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're supposed to start with some updates. Climate action plan is first. And I don't know is there anybody here who's going to represent that? Can you?
Sure. So right now, with the climate action plan, it's just mostly some drafting. They're refining some of the actions, and Median's been working on the refinement of those actions. And it's possible that they might have actions that were related to our land use zoning ordinances. So keep that in mind. So besides that, there's nothing.
What would be related? Do you have in what way would it be related to land use ordinance?
So some of the actions of the climate action plan might be related to the zoning ordinance because it might be things like to help with walkability or sustainability. Can you think of an example? So, right now. So, for instance, for parking or things that are related to lowering emissions related to transportation that could impact land use zoning ordinances, such as requiring EV chargers and parking lots and things like that. So you can expect to have quite a few items from the climate action plan that will, circle back to the planning board to make zoning amendments to help them reach those goals.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then the next item is what's going on at the project review board.
Okay, so there were a couple of items on the December meeting for the project review board. There was like a design review certificate and a demo at 48 Bow Street. LL Bean came in for with concept plans for 95 Main Street. So it's conceptual plans for the whole alterations to their flagship campus. They'll probably come back at some later time to BE. Harris-Seacott Ridge subdivision, that was that 80-unit subdivision application. They are requested an extension.
Duplexes on Route 1 North, is
yes.
that right?
Mm-hmm. On the medium density zoning district. So they just got approval for an extension, or was granted an extension. And then there was a one lot.
Have they submitted any plans at this point? Do you know the size of the units?
In terms of square footage? No, we don't. Yeah.
Somewhat relevant to the conversation.
And then we had a one-lot concept, a one-lot amendment to Seagree subdivision, and the board found that the concept plan was complete. And that's it for project review board for December.
Okay, then an update on status of current and future planning board projects.
So, the solar ordinance amendments that the planning board recommended to the town council were approved on December 19th. So that has been amended into the zoning ordinance. I'm not going to print you new binders. Just remember it's not 35 feet or the zoning district now. And the reason why it's because also we're waiting for all the LD 2003. So I'll print you.
Is the public hearing on that?
Yeah, so that was set yesterday. That was set for January 16th.
That's for LD 2003.
Yes, that's for all of the LD 2003 amendments, which have to do with our zoning ordinance, and for you, those of you who might be home, zoning, subdivision, and shoreland. So that will be January 16th that the council will listen to those. And also the same date for the design review amendments that you approved at the last earlier in December. So those are the status of the current projects that you sent forward. I plan to, to have an upcoming discussion on what we previously touched upon, which is how we review multifamily, of whether they should go through subdivision approval or review or through site plan. So sometime in the future, we'll bring that site-to-site comparison so we can start having those discussions. And besides that, I think we're going to be pretty busy with focusing on the comprehensive plan and to see whether we might have to schedule additional meetings at that time. And so far, we might be looking for the fourth Wednesday of the month, if we have to have them on a more regular basis. And there might be a little bit of cleanup with the shoreland. That was something that was brought up at one of our last meetings by somebody at the public hearing regarding the, I think it was high watermark definition, and some additional cleanup for the subdivision that we didn't have time to do at the last meeting. We might have found some remaining typos.
So one more that we were hanging on, the design ordinance changes.
The design review ordinance changes will be approved or not by the town council on January 16th.
So the same day. So the LD 2003 and the
Sorry, I
design
didn't read
ordinance
that clear.
update. And assuming that both of those are approved, does that table the letting of a contract for a revision of the design ordinance, or is that still in progress? It's still a go. Yeah, I think you should comment. And particularly because we're going to pivot onto the comp plan and they do relate to each other.
So, next month also could be a big night for our land use ordinances. We'll have a lot of changes based on a lot of work you guys have done, the work that Central Core group has done. As soon as they take action on the changes to Central Core, which were geared towards being low-hanging fruit, if you remember, potentially we're looking at a shift in the boundaries, cutting off anything lower than the railroad tracks. So an RFP will go out based upon the design, looking at the design review ordinance for the new district. Ignoring all
it
of
changes
that.
the RFP.
Yes, because it cuts out probably like at least 4 underlying zoning districts that they don't need to look at. So that's the plan.
So after that,
Yeah, because we need to know.
is there a schedule, and does it relate to the schedule of the comp?
We don't have a schedule. We need we need to see what happens. The biggest weight, I think, is the boundaries. That will make a biggest difference in the scope of work. And then I think there's some logistics as to who's sending it and who's doing interviews, because we have the planning board, the project review board, we have a Central Core. So I would say within a month, the hope is that will go out and we'll have a plan for how we're going to interview the consultant and bring somebody in. So that will be going on at the same time. And hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have clarity on who's going to kind of lead that process, whether we do it Council Ordinance Committee, Central Core, Planning Board, or some combination thereof.
Okay, did everybody do their homework and read the minutes?
I'm sorry that I didn't send you
Another announcement? Are there other announcements?
No, there's no announcement, but it is regarding the meetings, and I just want to apologize that we didn't get the minutes, the second set of minutes of December 13th. So, when I sent those out, I think some people might have not had the opportunity to look at them, so I don't know if you want to table the December 13th.
So we tabled it as, who's read what?
What do we call everybody, see if everybody's ready to order ready to?
I have not read the 13th. I didn't get the 6th. We could approve those. Can we approve those? Are they honest written? Did they make any typos?
I was actually too abstain from that.
Oh, right, you're abstained.
I found one typo, but it's.
Anybody's time to fix. Yeah. So, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting on December 6th? Somebody has to make a motion.
Make a motion to approve the meetings of December, the minutes of the December 6th Freeport. Second.
Those in favor? And that's done. going to table the approval of the one abstention. That's right, 5 in favor, 1 abstention. And we'll table the approval of December 13th until our next meeting, which simply is first week of February.
Okay, Caroline, did I have to make a motion to table?
May I hear such a motion?
Motion to table the approval of Wednesday, December 13th notes to the February board.
Second.
All those in favor? Even Wayne voted on that one, so we're good. Okay. So now we're supposed to elect officers. That seems very problematic without a person who will vote for either.
Why?
What?
Why is that problematic?
Oh, maybe it's actually
Confidential.
providential.
Don't show up, you get elected.
Is there any,
So you could do that without a full board present. It's really up to you. Boards always have different opinions. In case it doesn't go how you might think because somebody didn't show up, I would suggest that you maybe table that till the end of the meeting. So get through the meeting with Mitch running it as chair, because if somebody else up here gets elected, you're suddenly going to do a switcheroo in the middle of your meeting. So maybe just take that out of order and take it up
Oh,
at
I
the end
see
of the
problem.
meeting. Or if you want to table it to have a full board, then do that.
I would like to table it. I guess we need a motion for that.
Move we table nominations and elections of officers till the next full meeting,
Second it.
which is the date of, we need a date for that. What's the date, Cecilia?
To the next planning board meeting,
Yes, please.
February 7th?
It's the 7th. It is February 7th.
Move we table election of officers and nominations till February 7th, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor? And that item is done. Okay, so the primary focus of the meeting today is to review the comprehensive plan and provide some feedback. I don't know if everybody did their homework. I did write something up and send it. I don't know if I should have sent it to everybody. I sent it to you.
Yeah, so I shared everyone's feedback who submitted it with Jamal. So the homework was for North Star. And I think we can let them.
We haven't seen anybody else's, but so I don't know if you, Jamal, you can help lead a conversation here. Okay, great.
Yeah. Do we want to turn it over to?
So, Jamal, does anybody have anything to say before we ask Jamal to lead us in a discussion about this? So my understanding is that most of us, or at least some of us, have submitted comments to you on what we saw on the close read of the plan. And you're going to help guide where we're agreeing or disagreeing. Is that right? So can we turn over to Jamal? I don't need a motion for that, do I, Jamal?
No, we don't need a motion.
Go ahead. Can he stay where he is?
Yeah, I think so.
At some point, when I have a few slides just to keep us to guide us along, so I think at some point those will come up on the screen. But to start, I'm Jamal Perez. I'm the planner at North Star Planning. The consultant's chosen to work on the comprehensive plan update for the next 18 months or so. We met last month on December 13th. If you recall, you guys have homework assignment. I really don't like calling it that, but that's what it was. Talk about what you liked about the existing 2011 comprehensive plan, what you don't like about it, and then what important issues you would like to see addressed in the new comprehensive plan as we get towards adoption. We will also discuss, as it says, some details related to inventory chapters in terms of next steps. The next 4 meetings are going to be packed with The next 4 meetings will be jam-packed with a series of 12 or 13 state-required inventory chapters. So we'll talk about how those reviews will go. And then we'll do a quick glance at the schedule for the next 4 planning board meetings, just to get you guys excited. So as you recall, this was the homework assignment that's on the screen. I did receive some responses from Cecilia. Thank you for sending them. I believe it was like 4 or 5 people on this list. I did jot down a few notes about trends, but we could also just have an informal discussion. I'll leave it up to the chair how you would like to have this discussion.
You can summarize what you have. I mean, I bet we'd all be interested in seeing everybody's comments, but I don't think we have.
So I would say that, first of all, the 2011 is where we are basing our work from. That's the existing plan that you all, as the planning board, have been working with for 13 years now, 12 to 13 years. So it's still very important. It's still very, very relevant. It does need to be updated, but that's why we ask these questions, just to understand, how it's going, how do you like using it, and what's challenging about it. So looking through some of the answers, a lot of folks thought that it was a very solid document. The format is good. It's the way it's laid out with each chapter. But there were a lot of concerns about implementation and lack thereof. I saw that a lot in the notes, like really good narrative and descriptions of different parts of town, but it seemed like some folks were challenged with how much has been implemented since it was adopted. Going on to most important issues, there were a variety of issues that were noted. Obviously, a lot of folks are interested in housing. They're based on what's going on right now in our part of the country, Maine, Freeport. There's certainly a housing shortage throughout the region. Other folks were really interested in growth trends and growth areas and directing growth to certain parts of Freeport and trying to protect other parts from overdevelopment, any development. I think there's a lot of interest in open space and maintaining rural character in different parts of town. There were some interests in bicycle pedestrian elements, infrastructure, especially in the village, maintaining them and also expanding them to towns such as Brunswick to the north and Yarmouth to the south, just trying to create some connections so folks can get around a little easier without hopping in their car. There were some interests or noted issues about economic development, economic stability. Freeport is largely a retail center in the downtown, as you guys know better than me. I think there may be some interest in changing some of the uses, having more of a variety of commercial uses other than just retail, such as what exists today and what has for a while. And I think at this point, I will turn it back to you. There were a few other details, but they weren't trends. They were just random, not random, but singularly noted issues such as architectural character and development along Route 1, particularly Route 1 South, I would say, from the traffic light near Maine Beer Company to the YMCA on the Yarmouth border. That's obviously a very important part of Freeport as well. Very auto-centric development, not much bicycle pedestrian infrastructure yet. There are some bike lanes, but there was some interest in some development pressures in that area and just trying to maintain some sort of character of the town and not have it overdeveloped as well. So those were the trends. I think maybe I'll turn it back to you,
Let me
Mr. Chair?
just first ask others that mostly captured what I submitted. I don't know if anybody else.
I looked at this really more from a process standpoint. How did that process come together? How did the process of the 2011 plan come together? And then, there's a question about implementation. I didn't have a lot to draw from there. It's fairly new to town, but that's where I had questions, was around the implementation. I didn't get into what would I personally like to see in town, and where do I think they're, I didn't get into that kind of detail. I was process oriented, but that's where I came to.
Anyone else have? I just want to put a point on two comments that I made. One was, but it has to do with implementation. So I thought there seemed to be two flaws with implementation. One was that the plan was not very prescriptive. It just said, maybe do this, maybe do that, consider this, think about that. And without it saying, do this here, at least a little more. I understand it's an overarching plan to make it super specific, but it had so many long lists of things to think about. And so that was problem number one. If it said, do this, maybe we would have hammered home and done that, because then when you look at the list of the 6 or 7 things all over the plan, almost none of them were done. And I think that's partly the fault of the plan in not being pointed enough. I don't know if anybody else felt that was so much providing.
I tend to agree with that. However, I did like how there was at least some thought of prioritization of those, even though
Well, I also thought that
it happened.
almost all of the issues that are brought up are the same issues today. They were well described. We're still living with them. It seems to be addressing the same things we want to address: growth in the right areas, not in the wrong
But
areas.
it's always going to be that. It's perpetual. Those are the issues that you're going to talk about, and when you're talking about municipal planning.
2011 didn't seem so long ago, reading that document.
Right.
Well, one of the things you mentioned was the criticism of the existing plan is that not much was implemented. Mitch just talked about that too. So my question is, what can be done in the new plan that would make it more likely to be implemented? I mean, it can't be actually prescriptive. It can't bind anybody in the future to do anything in particular, right?
Correct.
What steps would we take to make sure that the recommendations are more likely to be implemented?
That's a really good question. Our experience being as clear and direct and pointed to the issues that are most important, and where in the community certain issues or policies should be enacted is really important. And sometimes comprehensive plans will be like an implementation table that will name certain committees or boards that will be responsible for that type of work. And sometimes you can even put a timeline in, but sometimes that's post-adoption. The community can choose to take it a little further. But yeah, being really specific, and I think including thinking about who should be responsible for adopting a certain policy, such as the LD 2003 updates, that's the planning board that starts here. So just noting that and being really clear, really spoon feeding folks, so that's very few questions.
I suppose in many cases,
I think you need your mic on.
I'm sorry. In many cases, the basis for implementing something is really the economy or what private developers want to do, things that are kind of beyond our control. So you could say, in this plan, we want 50% more housing in Freeport, but we have national supply and demand issues, which might make that impossible. So I guess some things are just not achievable unless prevailing conditions allow for them. But maybe there are some things that you can be prescriptive enough to make it more likely they'll happen.
Yeah, can you be as prescriptive? I'm just building on that question. That's sort of the core question. Can you be as prescriptive as to recommend zoning in certain areas and down zoning in other areas?
Yeah, a big part of the project that we'll work on together is a future land use map, and that whole process will be how is the current zoning, where are the deficiencies, where should it be changed? And that'll be
So that really does come out with not a list of 7 things, but more like, here's what we're recommending, and then test it against the, public. And so the vision plan did come out with relatively good prescription and action plan and a sense of consensus, and so we don't have to revisit it anymore. That's why I'd rather really drive where we're going up, where we're going down.
I think that's a good idea. There'll be a future land use workshop where we'll have different stations with different ideas based on feedback from the community. That'll be in the fall, and that'll be really provide the basis for the mapping that we'll do after that workshop, based on what we hear from the community.
Can I ask another question? What's your personal on your team's feedback on that plan? Were you involved? Were you on the planning board at that time? No.
I was.
You were?
Not in 2011.
No, so you were not a party to that document. So do you guys have an opinion of the document?
I don't know if we have a strong opinion, but we do work with a lot of communities who have plans that were last updated in the early 2000s. So that's really good that it's not from 2002 or 1 or 5. So it's a little more recent. But I will say that it's a little less interesting than some of the modern current plans. It's more just text and bullets.
Interesting, you mean not so many maps?
Not so many maps or images. Folks have really short, people like really quick and easy things right now, and I'm not sure how many folks would spend the time to read through a very long Word document. The plan that we'll provide will have lots of different images, formatted in a more interesting way, a little more colorful. So, but it's not bad. It's a pretty well written plan. I don't think it's a bad plan. But that was 13 years ago, and things change. So that's why we're doing it.
Okay. What else do you need from us? How do we?
I have a few more slides not related to the homework, so I think this has been really good. Thanks for the feedback. Thanks for taking the time. Hopefully we don't have too many more homework assignments for you. So we're going to move on to inventory chapters reviews. The next 4 meetings are going to include a series of draft inventory chapters that will be sent to you approximately 10 days prior to the meeting. Just so you know, in terms of process, North Star Planning team we have already started drafting chapters last month, and we do submit them to town staff just to have a first look to make sure we're on the right track before it goes to you all. So that'll happen. Once we solidify the draft, I want to keep saying draft, we will provide a draft copy 10 days prior to the meeting for your review. So the intention for these meetings is to have a high-level discussion about the chapters, highlights, themes, trends, we don't want to spend a lot of time looking at grammatical or wordsmithing certain things. There will be a lot of time for that, but we're going to do 3 chapters in an evening, which will be an hour and a half hour, hopefully, for each chapter. And we'd really like to use you all and all of your knowledge about are the chapters accurate and complete? Are we missing, let's say, a farmland and forestry chapter? Are we missing a big farm somewhere? Are we missing a recent timber harvesting operation? Is there a farm stand that we're missing? Like stuff like that. Not Wolf's Neck Farm is spelled incorrectly. We really want to utilize our time here together well and keep it high level based on how complete and accurate the language is. I just really want to make that clear because we've worked with some communities where we can spend an hour and a half just going line by line, and it's helpful. I think it's a better use of time to talk about the higher level issues based on the language.
Can you tell us a little more about what your goals are with those inventories? Like, you want to record every farm in town?
Yes, so there's some state required data. That's what we base the inventory chapters on. We have a bulleted list, we have data packs from the state, but there's also going to be some local data that we need from stakeholders and organizations that will look to you all and staff to help us. We're going to do some interviews. Good example is the land trust. They'll have some information that the state doesn't have about newly conserved lands or trails, or maybe the Chamber of Commerce when we talk about the economy and business. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to be looking for from the planning board. There will be time after the meetings. So once the meetings are complete, we get the okay, like these chapters look good. To start planning, good job. 1 week later, we're going to post them. We're going to work with staff to post them online on the project website and in town hall. There'll be some paper copies so folks can work with them online, provide comments. That's when we really want folks to really dig in and if grammar and wordsmithing is your thing, like please go nuts and make sure that it's as good as it can be. There will be our goal. I'll get into the schedule a little bit later, but I just want to note that there will be time for that. We just don't want to spend the majority of the meeting time doing that kind of stuff as a group. So I'm just going to jump into the schedule. It's pretty aggressive. We're going to be busy, but it's also really interesting. I think when I've been on different boards in different towns, and I'm a planner, so I realize I'm kind of weird, but like this stuff is pretty interesting. Like it's a snapshot in time about your community, and it's fun to discuss it with colleagues, and it's once in 10 years pretty much. So February 7th, we're going to review the population and demographics chapter, historic and archaeological resources, and then agriculture and forestry. March 6th will be a big night. There's 4 chapters coming in. There'll be marine resources, housing, recreation, and transportation.
Can I ask a question right there on
Sure.
housing? What will that inventory contain?
Housing. It's going to have a lot of different things. It'll include a lot of building permit information. We'll work with the code enforcement officers to provide us with new builds since 2011, basically. So we'll see.
Will you have, among the pieces of data that I think would be the most helpful is to understand how many units of what size?
Yep.
And particularly size, I think, in square footage units. I mean, because, and is there any way to, well, I think that data would be useful data.
Okay. Thank you. We'll also work with the assessor. They have a lot of really good information that we will use and put in the housing chapter. We're partnering with Jeff Levine on housing, the Levine Planning Strategies. He's part of our team. He used to be a planning director in Portland for a while, and he does a lot of different things now. But he's on our team, and he's really going to facilitate the housing chapter. We're going to do a little bit of that work, but we're really going to team up with Jeff, and he's an expert in housing policy.
He'll be there for that discussion.
I'm not sure that's the plan, but we can ask him and see if he's available. There will be a housing workshop, though, where he definitely will be there.
I got it. And that comes after the inventory. The inventory is just laying the bed of what exists.
And we'll have to make some decisions later on in the spring about when to have those workshops based on basically summer scheduling. But we'll have that conversation when the time comes. In April, we'll discuss natural and water resources, the economy, and public facilities and services. And then finally in May, we'll discuss fiscal capacity and capital investment plan, existing land use, and climate change. The reason why that says if needed is because we've done this a little differently in communities. Some communities want their own climate change chapter. Other communities will provide climate implications basically per chapter. So it's more integrated into the document. So we can make that decision when the time comes. We're working with FB Environmental on that work. We're happy to do it either way. Yarmouth is doing the bullet points in each chapter instead of one separate chapter. Again, that's going to be totally up to Freeport. There's benefits to both.
Do you want opinions about that?
Sure.
Later or now or?
You can maybe provide them to town staff, and they can tell us if that works for you.
I have another question. On is the economy chapter the one that covers industrial, commercial, retail? Where does that get discussed?
That'll be probably existing land use more than economy. Economy will be more about where is money being spent in town. It'll be more like a Chamber of Commerce interest kind of chapter talking about retail and the different types of businesses in town, and that'll actually be a really interesting basis for future land use about like what types of.
Well, that's sort of where I was going. Is how much retail and how successful is retail? Industrial, is it growing? Not growing?
Yeah, so that'll be also rely on some data from the assessor on what the type of what the property is being utilized for. I believe this is the last slide. So this is just some scheduling logistics related to the inventory chapters. So we're going to be working on these February, March, April, and May. So 1 week after your review, they'll be posted online on the website, and they will be available here in hard copy for folks who like to use red pens to mark things up. 1 week after planning board review, North Star will be facilitating some stakeholder outreach and interviews, such as department heads, different organizations. We'll be looking to you all and staff to help identify some of those important people who we should be talking to, movers and shakers in the community, experts. So start thinking about that. We're going to do those in March and April. And then this is not set in stone, but we're suggesting a public comments deadline for all chapters of June 30, 2024, halfway through the year. We found that it's good. People are generally deadline driven. So have a deadline. We generally see more feedback when there is an upcoming deadline rather than just open-ended. And then our goal is to have final inventory drafts completed, PDF'd, and ready to go for the final plan by fall 2024. And that's when we'll start doing visioning, more of the planning part of the project than the look back work that we'll do in the next few months. So that's all I've prepared.
Will you receive a copy of that? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we'll send this to staff in the next few days.
Great, thank you.
I know it's a lot. We're going to be busy, but that's what we're doing in the next few months. So I think it'll be good.
So as we plan future meetings, this will be a part of them, but then we'll be doing that work too.
Yes. We're not going to pause all the rest of the work we usually do, but at least I think some of the heavy work that we were doing with some of our ordinances that's hopefully past us, so that we can, focus on just smaller cleanup, or if anything shows up, and if we get any applications for zoning amendments, things like that.
So we're all wondering how we help you, and you've warned us about extra meetings, but you seem to be on a monthly cadence.
That's how we're going to be completing the chapters. That's our plan. We can meet on different dates if it works for staff, but right now we're planning on coming to the February 7th meeting. We get that. We can adapt and change if needed. We can be flexible.
I think we looked at North Star's schedule, municipal meeting schedule, some of your schedules, and so we have a placeholder to reserve this room for the fourth Wednesday of every month. So I think we'll get through next month and see how it goes. looking at 3 chapters. Hopefully we'll be able to have a light agenda so we can focus on that to kind of get a better handle on how much time you guys need. If we get applicant-driven agenda items as we work on cleanup projects, some of the things already on your to-do list, you might get a nice email from Cecilia asking you to meet on the 4th Wednesday. So if people could kind of just file that in the back of their brain. I think you gave some good feedback, especially from Mitch. I think a couple of the way you have some of the chapters lumped, you're going to have a lot of public interest and even the inventory. So like the housing combined with the other 2.
Could you go back a little bit?
For a meeting.
So I'm aware that I'm not here on the March 6th meeting. That makes me sad. Maybe I can do it by Zoom. Not sure. But the housing one is the one we're all going to be most interested in.
Yeah, I could see potentially looking at that, wanting to break the housing out. I think there'll be a lot of interest. We have permit data. We have some assessing data. I think that could probably warrant, between that and transportation, could probably warrant if you wanted to break them down. I do think if we know people aren't going to be here, it might be one worth shuffling around a little bit because
If that could be on February 20, whatever, maybe that would be awesome.
Yeah, so tomorrow we have a meeting with North Star staff, and we'll look at the needs for data, what we have for data. We can definitely get you the permit data by the end of February. The square footage data, it's not as great. It's assessing data is probably the way we're going to be able to most easily generate it, but we might need to manipulate some stuff a little bit more. So we'll have a better handle tomorrow on the data requests and the sources and the timing on that. But yeah, knowing that someone already can't be at the 6th, that might be one that we want to look at shuffling.
Sounds good.
So.
I'll try to see if I can Zoom that. But gone.
4 chapters is a lot, so.
Well, the other 3 kind of go together. Transportation's different, but all right.
Figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
What else can we do for you to be more helpful or more ready?
I think that was a good discussion. I'm feeling this is kind of more of an introduction before we really dive in. I don't really have any asks from you all right now, just to be prepared to really dive in when we're here next. So thank you.
Okay. So, is there other business for this evening? Hearing none. So, we'll get next meeting we'll also talk about, is LD 2003 done and is the housing ordinance, the design ordinance updated because there probably is a next step on some kind of timeline about that. So I don't want to miss a beat. The design review ordinance, and so we can't go forward with it until after the town council meeting. The next meeting will be after that town council meeting, so we should try to agenda it to make sure we know how to go forward on that project.
On the RFP project, you mean?
On the RFP project. Mm-hmm. Let's not miss a month because we should be ready to go at that point to figure out at least lay out the schedule. Okay. I think it'd be helpful if that process was simultaneous with this process. I just think at this point, the design ordinance. Right. Okay. There's a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor? Shortest meeting of the year.
I know. First one.
We're starting slow, but it's going to ramp up.
So I'm going to shuffle.